So Dodge can't sell its cars, and here's why that's a good thing. Welcome back to the channel, everybody. Shwazy here, and in today's video, we're sitting in a little bit of a different vehicle. We're sitting in our Fiat 500C Abarth. This is actually a vehicle that my wife and I purchased back in February of this year, and the reason I'm not sitting in my usual vehicle, which is the Dodge Challenger Hellcat, is because that vehicle is actually in for service right now. And I'll probably make another video where I talk about exactly what I'm having done on that car. Most of it is just your routine oil change, tire rotation, stuff like that. But I'm also having them take a look at a couple other things that are a little bit annoying that I'll probably discuss in a future video. But for today's video, since we're talking Dodge, I figured I'd sit in the next closest thing, which is a Fiat, and this thing is fun to drive, I'll tell you that. 5-speed manual, makes really good sound, there's no muffler, it is a joy. But the purpose of today's video is something else. I'm here to talk about Dodge and their above average inventory and how that's actually a really good thing for all of us that are trying to pick up a new Dodge Challenger or Charger. So for the last couple of years, we've been kind of in a very weird environment, a sad environment, because we've gotten used to the fact that we're likely gonna have to be paying markups for pretty much any desired vehicle. And that includes Challengers and Chargers, Scatpacks, Hellcats, even RTs have been seeing some pretty high markups. I mean, you'd find Scatpacks for over $60,000, $65,000, which is a price that you used to be able to find Hellcats for just a few years ago. Well, I'm here to tell you that those days may be coming to an end. So here's the backstory here. Cox Automotive, which if you guys aren't familiar, it's a pretty big automotive company. They actually own Auto Trader, Kelley Blue Book, and they do a lot of reporting and logistics for dealerships, including their dealership software. Well, every month they release a report where they talk about the status of new car inventory. And in the beginning of September, they released their numbers for August. And there's some good signs here. That is the fact that new car inventory hit the highest level it's been since April of 2021. They calculated that there's over 2 million units of new car inventory sitting on dealership lots. That's a whopping 68% higher than the same time last year. So inventory is starting to come up. Another thing they mentioned is the days of supply, which is essentially they take the average sales over the last month of the quarter and then divide it by the number of units sitting on the lot, and they calculate the days of supply of new car inventory that you have. Well, they calculated that the industry average across all the manufacturers is about 58 days of supply, and they estimate that about 60 days of supply is kind of normal. So as you can tell by those numbers, it sounds like things are normalizing and coming back to what they were before the pandemic. At the same time, there are some pretty vast differences in that data. What I mean by that is some of the more expensive vehicles, I'm talking, over $50,000, $60,000, those vehicles are sitting on lots a little bit longer as compared to the more affordable vehicles that are under $25,000, under $20,000. Those are sitting at some pretty record low numbers because a lot of people want to buy those vehicles because they're affordable. So vehicles made by manufacturers like Kia, Toyota, Honda, those inventory levels sit at the lowest number of days of supply as compared to, some of the more luxurious brands that are sitting on the higher end. But there is one brand that kind of stands out as the one manufacturer with the most amount of inventory as of the beginning of September. And yes, you guessed it, that manufacturer is Dodge. At the beginning of September, Dodge had a whopping 136 days of supply on dealership lots. It was closely followed by Chrysler with 125 days, and then Ram at 115 days, and then Jeep at 95 days. So some of the highest number of days of supply are within Stellantis's brand. And that's actually a good thing for any of us looking to purchase a new Dodge Challenger or Charger. As I'm sure many of you understand, economics are at play here. You have high supply and probably a pretty steady, maybe somewhat weakening demand because interest rates are going up and they continue to rise. You've also got student loan payments resuming here at the end of September, beginning of October. And so all of those things are kind of downward pressures on demand. And at the same time, your supply, at least when it comes to Dodge and Stellantis products, are sitting at somewhat of a record high right now on dealership lots. Now, you could argue that a lot of this inventory is the Dodge Hornet or the Dodge Durango, but let's be real here. There's only 4 models inside of Dodge's lineup. And just based on those numbers, I'm sure at least half of those are Dodge Chargers and Challengers that have been built, shipped to the dealerships, and people just aren't buying them. Now, you could also argue that part of the reason that these days of supply are so high for Dodge branded vehicles is because these dealers have been charging immense markups for cars that probably shouldn't warrant a markup. Like a regular run-in-the-mill RT Scat Pack probably shouldn't have a $5,000 markup above MSRP. I mean, these cars are great. They're fantastic vehicles. I've owned them, but they're not vehicles that should really be in such slow supply that you're gonna have to pay extra to get your hands on one. Now, part of the reasons the dealers have been doing this is, of course, because of the post-pandemic boom where everybody had a bunch of money that they wanted to spend, but also because, you know, Dodge has been advertising the fact that there's no longer going to be any type of V8 Challengers or Chargers after the end of 2023. I mean, those days are coming to an end, and they really haven't announced what's coming next, but it's not going to be a Scat Pack or a Hellcat engine. And so people have kind of created this pandemonia of trying to get their hands on the last living Hemi V8s that they can before those essentially go into the history books. All right, so what does it mean for those of us that are in the market and wanting to pick up a Challenger or Charger Scat Pack or Hellcat before they're officially dead, and then we're left with maybe electrification, maybe inline sixes? I mean, it's anybody's guess at this point because Dodge hasn't made really any announcements. Well, here's my advice for you. Don't pay markups. And I know it's really hard to take that advice because of what I just told you, right? They're coming to an end at the end of this year, and they're not gonna make them anymore. And so here's my only chance to get one of these vehicles. Well, I'm here to tell you that just be patient, and you can already find a pretty good deal on a Challenger Scat Pack. I've actually already come across a half dozen Charger and Challenger Scat Packs and Hellcats that are going for either at or below MSRP. So here's what you should do. Go on to Dodge's website and search for the vehicle that you're looking for, whether that's a Scat Pack, RT, Hellcat, whatever it is. Input that information, and Dodge has a really good nationwide inventory search feature on its website where you can find the exact trim, spec, color of the vehicle you're looking for and go directly to the dealership website to see exactly how much they're charging for a specific vehicle. Now, in my quick search, I found over 1,800 Dodge Challenger Hellcats for sale on dealership lots. Now, some of them were in transit, but a lot of them were still on dealer lots and for sale. And I just clicked on the link to get to the dealership website, and I was able to find what that dealership was charging for the car, whether it's going to be above MSRP, at MSRP, or below. That could give you a good starting point to determine if it's somewhere in the ballpark of what you're willing to pay. The next thing I'd recommend doing is copying the VIN number, because Dodge's website directly gives you the VIN number for the vehicle, and punch it into Google. Now, there's a chance that it might not pull anything up, or it'll pull up the website of the dealership, but there's also a chance that it will pull up one of the dozen different classified websites out there where you can find exactly how many days that vehicle has been sitting on that dealership lot. And that's kind of the second prong of your negotiation. If you're finding that this car has been sitting on the dealership lot for over 60 days, even though they're charging a markup, there's a good chance they're probably going to be a little bit more lenient and a little bit more open to decreasing that price and getting it to where you want to be. Now, obviously, they're not going to give you a Hellcat for $200 a month, but if you're being realistic here and you have a certain budget, my recommendation is draft up an email that you can send to any dealership, right? You just put, hi, I'm looking for so-and-so car at this and this price, this and this monthly payment. Or let's say you have cash, you could say, I'm willing to pay this and this price for a Dodge Challenger Hellcat, and copy and paste that email and send it to every single Dodge dealership that you can find that fits your criteria for a car you'd be willing to purchase, and see what happens, see who responds. Because chances are you're probably gonna get a couple responses from dealerships that are willing to make a deal with you, especially if they've been sitting on that inventory for a long period of time. Because the longer a car sits on their dealership, the more expensive it gets for them. Not only have they potentially overpaid for this vehicle because they bought it from a different dealership that happened to have more inventory, but they're also paying for interest payments on the flooring line that they used to purchase this vehicle from either the manufacturer or another dealership. So the longer that vehicle sits on the dealership floor, the more money it's costing the dealer. So they might be willing to take a hit just to get that vehicle off their floor and stop paying for it. Now, there are going to be stubborn dealerships out there. There's going to be those that aren't going to want to negotiate. Even if they've been sitting on this inventory for 30, 40, 50, 60 days, they think they have something that's worth paying extra for, and they're going to sit on that inventory. And honestly, that's their loss. Move on to the next dealership. And as you go through your list of dealerships and the emails that they send you back, use those responses as negotiating tactics for the vehicle you really want. Now, the story I'm telling you here is an exact example of what I did a couple years ago when I purchased my Dodge Challenger Hellcat. I was actually looking at a couple different vehicles, but I really wanted the Hellraisin one that I ultimately ended up purchasing. And what I did was I emailed a bunch of dealerships. I got some rough numbers from all of them, and I used those numbers that they quoted me to negotiate with the dealership that had the car I really wanted. So I told them, hey, you know, this other dealership is offering me so-and-so price. You guys aren't offering me that, so I guess I'm gonna have to go with that other dealership unless you can match the offer. And when I emailed the dealership that I ultimately purchased the car from the first time, they didn't end up getting me the deal I wanted because I don't think the car was sitting on their lot for a long period of time. So I ended up just sitting and waiting. And about a month after my initial email to them where they couldn't get me to the right price, I emailed them again and asked them if they could match the offer that I was giving them. And lo and behold, about 1 month later, as that car was sitting on their lot and nobody was buying it, they decided to come to terms with what I was offering, and I ended up flying out to Denver, Colorado and picking up that vehicle and driving it home. I made a video about it. So it takes time, it definitely takes some patience, and it also takes some negotiating skills with, you know, putting a couple dealerships up against each other and seeing which one's gonna get you the better offer. But I'm telling you, this process works. If you do this, especially in today's market where Dodge dealerships are flush with inventory, there's gonna be a dealership out there that's willing to work for you. One thing you have to keep in mind is just because the inventory is hot in your market doesn't mean that inventory is hot all throughout the United States. I mean, you'll see this time and time again. There are certain vehicles that sell here in the Mountain West that don't sell very well on the East Coast and vice versa. And so if you're willing to travel or if you're willing to ship a vehicle across to a different state, then you're gonna be better off because you're gonna find a dealer that is gonna be able to sell you a vehicle at a lower price. Now, the other little caveat that you're probably gonna hear some dealerships say is, well, with these UAW strikes, you know, inventory is coming down, so here's your last chance to buy it because they're not making these at all anymore, seeing as how the strike is going on and we don't know when it's going to end. Well, here's my response to dealerships that say that. As it stands right now, here in September of 2023, none of Dodge's factories are currently on strike. The only Stellantis factory that's been affected by the UAW strikes as of today is the Jeep plant in Ohio. But Dodge hasn't been impacted. And so if a dealer is trying to use that as an excuse over the next week or two, well, you can call BS on that because Dodge isn't impacted as it stands today. So there you have it, folks. That is what's going on in the market right now. And my advice, if you're looking for a Charger or Challenger, RT, Scat Pack, or Hellcat, these are going for under MSRP. Not all dealerships will do it, but follow my advice. Email as many dealerships as you can in your free time and see what their responses are. I have a feeling you're gonna be surprised because some of them, they're gonna be sitting on this inventory for over 60 days and they're gonna wanna do whatever they can to get this inventory off their lot, and their loss is your gain. So hopefully you guys enjoyed today's video and found it informative in your car buying journey. And let me know what you're currently seeing out in the market in your local dealerships. Are dealers sticking to their guns and maintaining prices above MSRP, or are you seeing some of those prices start to come down as inventory just sits on their lot and they're paying interest payments on them? Make sure you hit that like button if you guys enjoyed today's video. Until next time, everybody, I hope you stay Schwazy, stay healthy, have a wonderful day.